In 2019, Robert Fitzpatrick would publish a book, Ponzi-nomics: The Untold Story of Multi-Level Marketing, which uncovered the deception, fraud, and government corruption that ultimately allowed companies branding themselves as MLMs, direct selling, or network marketing to be considered legal. If you're someone that's involved with an MLM or know someone who may be involved, please consider watching the entire video and sharing so we can collectively bring the message about this unethical business to light. Hi, I'm your host Zari, and welcome to an Andrew and Zari video. In today's video, we want to present you with a timeline of how MLM companies came to be, what actions the government took, if any, to prevent their deceptive practices, as well as where we stand today. In the 1930s, a man by the name of Carl Renberg, who's now known as a pioneer of multi-level marketing, started the California Vitamins Company, a company selling vitamins and nutritional products right when America was getting more educated about health and experiencing a boom in the health industry. In 1939, Carl would go on to name this company Neutralite, which is now recognized as the first MLM. Contrary to popular belief, this company was a failure, that is until Carl joined arms with two men, Lee Meidinger and William Castleberry, who were the first national distributors of the vitamin products and therefore became the first affiliates in an MLM. The new model that they would establish would have elements of direct selling like door-to-door, Ponzi, which happened only 20 years prior, and the chain letter, which was a mania in the US in the mid-30s during the Depression. By the end of 1945, Neutralite would implement the MLM system and would go from having just a mere few $1,000s in revenue to millions in just a couple of short years. All this growth, and the business was selling the exact same products, vitamins, which were not even FDA approved, but that didn't matter, because as you will come to learn, MLM is never about the product. Rather, it's about the chain, in which the salesperson ultimately is the customer, the promise of unlimited opportunity. You recruit some people and they recruit some people, and pretty soon you could theoretically have an army of people working underneath you. Every new recruiter making the same promises to the ones below, no matter how far it extends. A classic chain, a classic pyramid. In the 1960s, as home-based businesses were becoming more popular, pyramid schemes were spreading through the United States like a rampant disease. At this point, it was not just Neutralite, but many other companies as well. People were recruited by the hundreds of thousands. By the 1970s, regulators started to get a lot of complaints regarding pyramid scheme companies. This is where, for the first time, the government acknowledged the unethical and harmful business practice of anything that involved chains. Several states passed anti-pyramid laws, such as California, which passed the Anti-Endless Chain Law in 1968, signed by then-Governor Ronald Reagan. This law still stands today and states that every person who contrives, prepares, sets up, proposes, or operates any endless chain is guilty of public offense and is punishable by imprisonment in the county jail not exceeding 1 year, or in state prison for 16 months, 2 or 3 years. In 1973, Senator Walter Mondale proposed a bill in Congress which would make pyramid schemes a criminal offense. Unfortunately though, this never passed into law. During this time, it seemed that the government was realizing that any business which is involved in the endless chain should not be allowed to operate. They also saw that schemes like this have the potential to cause mass manias, which is exactly what happened in Albania several decades later. It would get so out of hand there that it toppled the government and resulted in a civil war, killing 2,000 people. If you would like to learn more about this story, please let us know in the comments. We would love to do a future video on this. So what changed in the United States after the 70s? What happened that allowed pyramid schemes disguising themselves with fancy names like MLM and direct selling to be functioning today? In simple terms, what happened was politics and corruption. And the major player that was heavily involved in those politics was the Amway Corporation. We want to take a step back here to explain this to you in a bit of detail so you can understand the magnitude of this and realize how far up the political spectrum MLMs really have influence. The founders of Amway, Jay Van Andel and Richard DeVos, had spent 10 years working under the umbrella of Neutralite before they established Amway. In the 1970s, the government took action against the three biggest MLM companies of the time, Costco, Holiday Magic, and Amway. Costco was run by Glenn Turner, who actually lived in a castle in Florida. They sold mink oil-based cosmetic products, and after facing a lot of legal trouble because of complaints and government intervention, they were shut down. Holiday Magic also sold cosmetics and home care products, and after the founder, William Penpatrick, passed away in 1973, they were subsequently shut down with their own share of legal troubles. The last of these three companies, Amway, however, would go on to change the course of history with how MLM companies were viewed by the public. The founders of Amway portrayed themselves to be a pro-capitalist company about entrepreneurship and self-employment. They were also heavily embedded into Republican politics with funding and holding positions in government at certain points in their lives. In 1973, an unusual event occurs that would be the turning point for Amway and future MLMs. President Richard Nixon resigns due to the Watergate scandal. The vice president at the time, Gerald Ford, takes the role as the president of the United States. What's interesting is that Gerald Ford is from Michigan, a stronghold of the Amway Corporation, and Amway happens to be one of his biggest financial supporters. So when he's president, the founders of Amway and the president have a private meeting at the Oval Office, while they are simultaneously being prosecuted by the Federal Trade Commission. The case would continue on for several years, but by 1979, the FTC would essentially drop the case against Amway and therefore legalize Amway, opening the floodgates for future MLMs. Over the next 12 years, Amway was one of the largest financial backers of both the presidents, Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, and therefore faced little to no political or legal headwinds. In this time, they would go on to further expand their business and grow into a multi-billion-dollar enterprise. The narrative had changed from the chain letter or pyramid scheme to what we now know as multi-level marketing and direct selling. So much so that in 1982, President Ronald Reagan would speak at an Amway conference and call it the model of capitalism in America. The same model that was a criminal offense in several states not even a few years prior was now being labeled as the greatest feat of capitalism, just because they had sold everyone the narrative that they are multi-level marketing or direct selling. We also want to emphasize that the Direct Selling Association, which sets the guidelines for all direct selling companies, is in fact just a lobbying group for multi-level marketing companies. Some of the biggest backers of the Direct Selling Association are companies like Amway and Herbalife. In the end, greed and deceit fueled this industry, and because it's so intertwined into politics, they have unfortunately fooled the masses. They sold the narrative that MLM is not based on recruitment, but based on direct selling of the products and you getting a commission. However, the business fundamentals never changed. In reality, all MLM companies rely and teach their recruiters the fundamentals of having a downline, essentially creating a chain by recruiting more individuals. They all sell the opportunity of you becoming your own boss, the promise of unlimited opportunity. In a very obscure area in the fine print of their income disclosures, will they actually state that only 1% make the kind of income that they made you dream about in the first place? And let me tell you, that 1% is at the top of the chain. That's the MLM way though, to sell you a dream, to tell you you're becoming a business owner, whereas in reality, you just got sold into being their main product. Sadly, the worst practice of this entire business is that they prey on individuals who are struggling the most financially. When you have very little to almost nothing, and you are presented this dream and the endless opportunity, it's very easy to get tempted. And this industry thrives on that. The harsh reality is that the majority of people who enter an MLM very quickly realize that it's never actually about the product, but about recruiting other individuals. With starter kits in the hundreds of dollars and monthly quotas needed in order to meet subscription statuses, most people end up inevitably failing. And when they decide to leave it all and quit, it is with a financial net loss and an overwhelming sense of failure that they were not capable of reaching their dream status promised to them, not realizing that it is because it is a system designed to bleed you dry before moving on to its next victim. Our purpose of this video was to bring to light the deceptive practices of all these companies labeling themselves as MLMs. If you buy into a business or venture which requires you to recruit other people to be able to make any real money yourself, just remember that's a pyramid scheme. A political, corrupt, legal pyramid scheme, but a pyramid scheme nonetheless. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. If you have questions or suggestions for future videos, please leave us a comment. We will read all of your comments. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next one.